The first mentions of unusual phenomena date back to the 15th century before our era. Chronicles record that in the winter month of the year 22, the foxes of Pharaoh Ramses saw a moving fiery circle in the sky. This circle, headless, emitted a destructive breath, which caused terror among the foxes, who fell to the ground in fear. Hundreds of similar testimonies have accumulated in the chronicles of humanity. However, official science, known as ufology, began to take shape only in the middle of the last century. On the 4th of June, 1947, American businessman Kenneth Arnold, flying in a small plane over the state of Washington, noticed 9 silvery discs moving across the sky at great speed. A few years later, a top-secret military base, Z-51, was established in the Nevada desert, which still does not appear on maps of the United States. At this site, unidentified flying objects and what remains after their crashes have been studied for many years. In the Soviet Union and later in Russia, numerous testimonies of contacts with representatives of extraterrestrial civilizations have also been recorded. The places of the Tunguska meteorite's fall, the fiery zones of the Voronezh region, and the strange circles in the fields of Stavropol have become objects of study. However, perhaps nothing can compare to the dramatic story of the Kishtim humanoid. Hundreds of specialists around the world have worked on unraveling this phenomenon, and the story of the alien Alyoshenka continues to develop, emerging with new facts, some of which may become a global sensation. The fate of the Kishtim alien remains one of the mysteries that cannot be overlooked. Who is he? An extraterrestrial or a mutant of earthly origin? Where is his body now, and who benefited from erasing the memory of his presence among us? All events related to the humanoid took place in the Chelyabinsk region. It is there that the story begins. At the cemetery of the village of Kalinovi, not far from the city of Kishtim, the story of the alien Alyoshenka began. Local pensioner Tamara Prosperina was known for her eccentricities and often walked in this place. This ritual continued for many years, but on the 13th of August 1996, Tamara returned home not alone. That day, feeling weak, she locked her house and headed to the cemetery, where she found solace. After walking around the outskirts, she felt that something was about to happen. Suddenly, Tamara saw a strange dim light and heard an inhuman moan. Taking an old flashlight from her bag, she followed the sound. When she saw him, strength returned to her, and her soul was at peace. Tamara realized that she had found the one she had been waiting for all these years. The old woman was not disconcerted by the fact that he did not resemble any known creature in science. For her, that did not matter. She knew one thing. Now she had her little child, and she told everyone that she had a little one, Alyoshka, a sweet little boy. Vladimir Bemdlin, a captain of justice and investigator of the Kishtim Department of Internal Affairs, became the author of the famous video recording of the alien Alyoshka. He noted that, in his opinion, it was something sent from above. If the police captain believed that a flying saucer had landed in the village of Kalinovi, then perhaps others should believe it too. Tamara recounted that she found a strange infant in the cemetery, measuring just slightly larger than the palm of her hand. Her friends were surprised, but attributed the incident to the sensitivity of a lonely woman. At that time, no one could have thought that she was telling the truth. Over the 8 years, many people had visited that cemetery. Some were searching for the wreckage of an aircraft, while others sought other samples to confirm the extraterrestrial origin of the being. However, nothing was found because, if there was an aircraft, it should have been sought elsewhere, but more on that later. At the site where Tamara Prosperina found the alien Alyoshka, there is now a fresh grave. The house where Tamara lived has changed owners, and they did not allow anyone inside, claiming that only a painted floor remained in the apartment and nothing that could remind anyone of the events of 1996. Despite the fact that the Kishtim alien was found 8 years ago, the fate of the humanoid Alioshka continues to interest not only her. In August 1996, in the Chelyabinsk region, in the village of Koalinovy, a week after Alioshka's appearance, the elderly woman's daughter-in-law came to visit her. She recalls, "I came home, I worked in the bathhouse as a cook. We went with our blood relatives, received our pensions, bought groceries. We were sitting in the kitchen, and she said, 'We need to feed the little one.'" To this, Tamara Prosperina Jr., one of the main witnesses in the case of the Kishtim humanoid, initially thought her daughter-in-law was joking. She describes the creature. "The child, if it can be, has a head that is pink or red, but this one is dark brown, especially with a visor covering it. The alien had a round mouth framed by skin, and inside was a tongue resembling a shovel. The woman immediately understood that she had seen something non-human. The little alien lacked sexual characteristics. There was not even a belly button, but it had a full set of teeth in its mouth. The creature's skin had a murky gray color, and to the touch it was loose, cool, and damp. The humanoid moved, stretched out its tiny hands, and made sounds that sent shivers down the woman's spine. Like a moan. Some kind of moan. It seemed that the alien was suffering from unbearable pain, and was reaching out as if asking for help, but she did not know how to assist him. He ate cottage cheese, and in my presence he ate a little cottage cheese. She would put a little on a spoon for herself and eat it, like one does when feeding a child. In the end, all of Alioshka's food consisted of condensed milk, sweet water, and cottage cheese. Tamara Prosperina, the younger, marvels, "I never cease to be amazed by the Russian woman. She can stop a horse in full gallop and feed a humanoid." Later in the story, Alioshka falls into the hands of criminal organizations, and a conspiracy of cosmic powers begins. The question of where the bodies of the humanoids were hidden remains open. In August 1996, pensioner Tamara Prosperina discovered a mysterious creature resembling a small humanoid. According to eyewitnesses, the creature, no more than 25 centimeters tall, was alive, consumed food, and made sounds similar to a moan. The pensioner named the alien Alioshka and believed that he was sent to her from above. Besides Tamara Prosperina the younger, her son Sergei could also recount the incredible events. He might shed light on the mystery of the origins of the humanoids Alioshka. According to reports, he was last seen in the village of Koalinovaya. Sergei Prosperin, Tamara Prosperina's son, recalls, "She came with him with some kind of child wrapped up. She came to the zone. But who would let her in there?" He adds, "If an old woman knocked on my door with a humanoid in her arms, I too would hardly let her in." The son of the old woman spoke about what his mother had to endure. Tamara Prosperina was still a girl when a tall, handsome soldier named Vanya entered her life. It was a true great love, and soon a son named Seryozha was born. But time passed, and the soldier, having completed his service, went home, promising Tamara that he would return. 45 years ago, events occurred that forever changed Tamara Prosperina's life. Since then, everything most precious to her has been embodied in her son Sergei. When the boy nearly died before his mother's eyes, it became a terrible blow for her. "I was 4 years old when I got hit by a motorcycle. I was getting off the bus and collided with a motorcycle," Sergei recalls. After that, he began to have problems. He started to behave strangely, speak incoherently, and his behavior changed. "I was taken to an orphanage, and she was taken to the hospital," he recounts how life separated them. When the doctors took Tamara away, she begged them not to separate her from her son, claiming that she could not live without him. "She stole me from the boarding school how many times," shares Sergei. "She would come and take me away from there." Thus, Sergei grew up seeing his mother only occasionally, and his adult life did not turn out well. He ended up in prison several times for hooliganism, but Tamara Vasilyevna forgave him everything, only asking him to give her a grandson. She had already thought of a name for the future grandson, Alyoshka. When a daughter-in-law appeared, Tamara was on cloud nine with happiness, but the young couple could not bring her joy with a grandson. The baby lived only a few hours. Who knows, maybe on that August day in 1996 she went out again to meet her Ivan, Sergei reflects. Sergei never saw the humanoid Alyoshka, and everything that happened to him afterward he could only imagine. He could not answer the important question for him about where to look for the humanoid. However, other witnesses in 1996 definitely saw this amazing creature. Tamara Sr. did not take her eyes off Alyoshka and was hostile to suggestions to show the being to doctors and scientists. But one day, feeling unwell, she was taken away by ambulance. The alien was left in the care of friends of her younger daughter-in-law. When Tamara Jr. returned a few days later, she discovered that the humanoid no longer showed signs of life. I went home, looked, he was already dead, but the body was gone. Only the head remained, she recounts. The mouth remained the same red, you understand, nothing turned blue. The body disappeared, but the head remained just as it was in life, only the eyes became cloudy. Tamara's acquaintances did not keep their word, leaving the creature to a certain death. In the stuffy room, Alyoshka mummified. The woman decided not to report it to the police, like with a deceased pet, and gave the body to an acquaintance, Vladimir Nerdanov, asking him to bury Alyoshka. But he acted differently. The address of Vladimir Nerdanov was not easy for me to obtain, says the narrator. It's an apartment on Chernitskaya. After several attempts to reach him, he finally gets in touch with Nerdanov. "Hello, I need Vladimir Nerdanov," he begins the conversation. Nerdanov replies. "I would like to ask you a few questions regarding the alien." But Nerdanov evades the answer, stating that he does not know what happened to the body. "Let the door open," he says, and the conversation ends. Time returns to September 1996 when mysterious events were unfolding in the Chelyabinsk region in the city of Kishtim. Kishtim, founded in 1757, is located on the eastern slope of the Middle Urals, among numerous lakes, 90 kilometers northwest of Chelyabinsk. Etymologically, the name of the city is connected to the Bashkir word meaning to winter. In the autumn of 1996, Vladimir Nerdanov found himself the center of attention for the operatives of the Kishtim Department of Internal Affairs. He was detained as a suspect in theft and taken for an investigative experiment. On the way, Nerdanov asked investigator Yevgeny Mokichev an unexpected question about encounters with aliens. Mokichev, at that moment a captain of justice and investigator, was taken aback and replied that he had never encountered aliens and did not believe in their existence. To this, Nerdanov claimed that he had one of them at home. This enticing proposition did not leave Mokichev indifferent, and being a researcher, he could not resist the desire to see the humanoid being. Nerdanov, having obtained the dead body of an alien named Alyoshka, planned to sell it to a museum. After his arrest on theft charges, he decided to exchange this valuable find for his freedom. Soon after, the mummy of the alien was seen by his colleague, Captain Vladimir Bendel. He reported the find to his superiors and took the mummy, which was stored in a freezer. Investigator Bendel became the author of a video recording documenting the existence of Alyoshka. These frames capture the apartment where the Kishtim alien found its final resting place. The photograph was taken from an image that was drawn from memory by the daughter-in-law of Tamara Prosperina. In the drawing, the humanoid is depicted as no taller than 30 centimeters with a slender build, eyes without eyelids, and a mouth without lips. There are suggestions that if a flying object had an accident in the vicinity of the village of Kalanovi, the alien might not have been alone. Vadim Chernobrov, the coordinator of the all-Russian public organization Cosmo Search, noted that the found being has several sharp differences from a human, leading him to believe that it is a bipedal creature with a humanoid spine. Witnesses who saw Alyosha alive claimed that his hands ended in tiny fingers resembling claws, but unfortunately these body parts did not survive on the mummy. While reviewing the video recording of the alien's body, Bendel noticed that he had seen something similar somewhere before. Preparing for the expedition, he studied numerous materials on ufology and discovered that similar beings had been found on the other side of the globe, in Chile, as well as earlier in Puerto Rico. The term humanoid translates to a being from other planets that has arrived on Earth. For many years, humanity has been trying to understand who they are and how they managed to reach our planet. However, the mysteries of UFOs are strictly guarded by intelligence agencies and are used for their own purposes. At the famous secret American base Z-51, according to former employees, the study of the bodies of deceased humanoids and the remnants of flying objects has been ongoing for several decades. Local residents know that crossing Zone 51 will result in arrest and fines, and those who dare to penetrate deep into the territory may be shot without warning. From time to time, someone approaches Bendel with a proposal to sneak into the zone by car, but he considers this absurd, as they would be detected long before approaching. Official authorities in various countries refuse to acknowledge the facts of UFOs, but numerous amateur recordings prove that much is being concealed from the public. There is a version that space powers, as early as the 1960s, entered into a strictly confidential agreement to impose the classification top secret on such information. These frames were recorded in that very 1996 year in the Chelyabinsk region where these events took place. Where? I don't see. There, look more closely. We conducted an investigation into cases recorded at the Academy of Sciences regarding the fall of a certain silvery cylindrical object near Kishtim. A few days after these frames were recorded, Tamara Prosverina discovered a humanoid being in an old village cemetery. As part of her investigation, the host of the program, Don't Explain Manovac, is in the Chelyabinsk region. It was there in August 1996 that pensioner Tamara Prosverina found a strange creature resembling a little man in the cemetery. The grandmother named this unknown being Alyosha. After some time, the old woman was taken to the hospital, and the unattended humanoid perished. After the death of the Kishtim alien, its body fell into the hands of a petty thief who, wishing to bribe the police, offered the investigator the dried body. People are still working in the Kishtim hospital who, in the 90s, tried to study the origin of this being. Damn, this tale is quite exhausting me. I think I'll go meet them. The meeting did not take place. First, Alyosha was examined by a gynecologist and a urologist. The doctor spent several hours with the humanoid but could not reach a unanimous conclusion. No one dared to take responsibility and make a final judgment. They expressed a timid suggestion that Alyosha resembled a premature baby. However, the official conclusion was to be made by the local pathologist. As soon as he saw the mysterious being, the doctor became extremely agitated. He explained that he had never seen anything like it before. Not in a single human fetus, and thank God we managed to study them thoroughly. We had never encountered a head like this. Stanislav Samoshkin, the pathologist from the Kishtim City Hospital, was the man who made the official conclusion about the nature of the Kishtim humanoid being. The frontal bone was a single mass, and the occipital was also a single mass. And here, you cannot call it either temporal or parietal. That is to say, it is some sort of parietal temporal. That's all. In other words, it is a classic old helmet. Remember how they used to depict heroes, how they showed it in movies? That was the picture. And that's it. The pathologist's conclusion became a sensation. He essentially made a discovery. Abroad, the entire ufological world would have known him. In Russia, however, no one reacted to the glory of the doctor. Despite its dwarf-like size, the being had a fully formed skeleton. This is impossible in a premature baby. In this subject, the bone tissue was present everywhere. and there was practically no cartilage. In other words, this was a fully formed skeleton, you see, the arrangement of the pelvic bones. This indicated that this, shall we say, subject moved in a vertical position, meaning it was bipedal. As is often the case in such situations, medical officials put forward a version that was convenient for them. The Kishtim humanoid is a human child who underwent a strong mutation during development in the womb. However, this version does not withstand criticism. Mutation has its own laws. A child cannot mutate, for example, into a rabbit. Yaroslav Kozovsky, a senior researcher at the Institute of Biogenetics, Doctor of Technical Sciences. There are clearly organized outgoing parameters present everywhere. Furthermore, a mutating infant simply would not be able to consume food. The ufological version that emerged after studying Alyoshka's remains suggested that it was a conditionally intelligent being. One of the researchers hypothesized that it was a kind of indicator, a biorobot sent to Earth by another civilization for the purpose of gathering information. And in fact, there were several such Alyosheniks. The findings made in South America support this version. It is likely that he sustained severe damage as a result of events about which we, unfortunately, know nothing. Perhaps it was a technological disaster related to an alien spacecraft, but of course he was not found in a cemetery, where he was discovered by grandmother Prosperina, but somewhere else. But where? Somewhere near us exists something that can be called a biorobot. This being, whose primary function is to carry out the will of its creator. There is a theory that humans can also be biorobots, programmed by nature or by God. Scientists suggest that alien civilizations create biological robots, beings from parallel worlds and other universes. Their task is to execute the will of their creators, to observe and control situations, and possibly even to influence them. A biorobot is capable of transmitting information over any distances. It is known that each organ of the human body emits in a certain range. A slight modification of the heart or lungs can lead to them beginning to transmit electromagnetic, neutrino, or even hypothetical energy information waves. It is not necessary for the relay to be aware of its mission. Perhaps at some point, the biorobot's body retunes to a wave of another frequency and transmits everything it sees to some technical device even outside of Earth and the solar system. But who is he really? An alien sent to us on a benevolent mission to observe modern civilization with its harmful emissions, radiation, and ozone holes? The official conclusion made by pathologist Samashkin in 1996 stated that this was not a human child. The pathologist spent more than 40 minutes examining the corpse and refused to conduct an autopsy, writing a document that existed in the case until its closure. In this document, he claimed that before him was not a living being, not a human. Nevertheless, a definitive answer to this question could only be obtained after examining DNA samples. In 1996, just as in our days, the Kishtim City Hospital did not allow complex analyses to be conducted, including DNA analysis. No particles of Alyoshenko's body were found here. Perhaps the doctors themselves have often reproached themselves for not even taking a basic tissue sample. September 1996, Chelyabinsk region, the city of Kishtim. Illness kept Tamara Vasilyevna Prosvirina in the hospital, where she once shared the details of her astonishing discovery. Was he buried? She asked. Buried, she confirmed. Not with his head, they clarified. Not with his head. He was wrapped up, right? I wrapped him, turned him over so he wouldn't stop, she recalled. He was a little bit cut. He was alive, cried. You wrapped him and brought him home. Neighbors noted that the characteristic chewing movements the grandmother adopted from Alyoshka were not previously observed in her. Do you know who died? She asked. Who died? They replied. This little child died, you know, she continued. Died? They asked again. What do you mean? They were surprised. Well, they put you in the hospital, and he died. That's why we came to see. The further fate of the discovered humanoid being was to be decided by Captain Bendlin. He understood that serious scientific research was required. When investigator Bendlin turned to ufologists from the city of Kamensko-Uralsk, they arrived armed with professional filming equipment. Who these plainclothes individuals were, and whether they were truly ufologists, remains unknown. However, impressed by their serious demeanor, Captain Bendlin agreed to hand over the mummy for study. For several months, they reported that the research on the remains was in full swing. Only when the captain began demanding explanations did the ufologists admit that they no longer had Alyoshka. The disappearance of Alyoshka became even more mystical than the story of his appearance. It is foolish to blame Vladimir Bendlin for what he did. He had already suffered from the investigation into the Kishtim humanoid case and was soon dismissed from the authorities. However, the police captain managed to keep a sample of the fabric in which the alien was wrapped. There is an opportunity to take a closer look at this invaluable find in our program dedicated to the abduction of Alyoshka by the Special Services, the DNA examination, and the Shroud of the Humanoids, which will answer questions about his origin. The traces of the alien lead to Japan. After the commercial break, it will be even more interesting. The program host does not explain, but the manufacturer is conducting an investigation in the Chelyabinsk region, where pensioner Tamara Prosperina discovered a mysterious creature about 25 centimeters tall. It resembled a little man, was alive, and consumed food. However, soon the unattended humanoid perished. Its body ended up in the hands of investigator Bentlin from the Kishtim Internal Affairs Department. Conducting her own investigation, the investigator passes the finding to the ufologists. But under unclear circumstances, the mummy disappears. I know that the leader of the ufologists from Kaminsky-Ural, Galina Semyonkova, is hiding from journalists. She even changed her place of residence. The body of Alyoshenko was located in the back seat of the car. When the ufologist's vehicle was passing 78 kilometers from the Chelyabinsk highway, something strange happened. The engine stalled, and no attempts to restart it were successful. A glowing object appeared in the sky, a beam emerged, and a sound was heard that was unbearable for human hearing. The ufologists left the vehicle, and when everything quieted down, they returned and discovered that the mummy of Alyoshenko was gone. I can hardly believe this. Most likely, ufologist Semyonkova invented this story to avoid returning Alyoshenko, but perhaps she was simply advised to forget about the alien. Someone needed this version very much, believe me. Allegedly, this being was taken back to the heavens, to the homeland of the alien from Alpha Centauri. Soon after the disappearance of Alyoshenko, a real alien fever began in the city of Kishtim. Some, to the displeasure of the regional authorities, began to recall the tragedy of 1957, which occurred in close proximity to Kishtim. On the 29th of September 1957, an explosion occurred at the chemical plant Mayak in the city of Chelyabinsk 40, now Ozersk, involving a container of radioactive waste. The contaminated area covered about 20,000 square kilometers, which included 217 populated areas. Approximately 270,000 people received radiation exposure above permissible levels. The radioactive trace of the explosion extended eastward from the plant for 1,000 kilometers. It was here, that same autumn of 1957, that an unidentified flying object was observed. There is data indicating that it crashed at that time. A clear answer to the question of who exactly the humanoid Alyoshenko was, an alien or a mutant, could only be provided by scientific examinations. But since the mummy itself disappeared, all that remained was to construct theories. Information emerged in two directions. The first version claims that Alyoshenko was sold to the Americans for colossal sums of money, and some people made a very good profit from this. The second version states that the mummy fell into the hands of special services, who are closely dealing with this matter, and it constitutes a state secret. That is why it disappeared so unexpectedly. Special services, state secrets. This sounds more like the plot of an action movie or a science fiction thriller. That is what I thought too. But only up to a certain point. In 1999, journalists from Japan arrived in Kishtim. They intended to bring a hypnotist with them to learn as much as possible from the pensioner Prosperina about the alien. However, just a few days before the arrival of the Japanese film crew, a tragedy occurred. The main witness in this case, the elderly Tamara Prosperina, died under very strange circumstances. She ran barefoot onto the roadway where there had been no traffic prior. And then, as if caught in a vice, she was squeezed by two cars from both sides, one of which was fatal. After the pensioner's death, the only hope for the researchers to uncover the truth became the mummy of Alyoshenko. At that time, information emerged that generous Japanese offered $200,000 for the remains of the Kishtim humanoid. Elena Mori, the head of the press service of the Ural Customs Administration, noted that photographs could be used to prevent attempts at smuggling. This allowed customs officers to closely monitor possible attempts to export and stop them. However, all efforts proved futile. The disappearance of Alyoshenko was as strange as its appearance. This story is full of mysteries. Nevertheless, it was discovered that the piece of fabric in which Alyoshenko was wrapped had been preserved. Several years ago, it was taken from Vladimir Bendlin by enthusiasts of the Kosmopoisk Society. This meant that the story was returning to Moscow. The coordinator of Kosmopoisk, Vladimir Chernobrov, agreed to meet on one condition: to tell only the truth. Kosmopoisk represents an international movement and a nationwide association that investigates anomalous phenomena with the aim of applying the knowledge gained for the benefit of humanity. It is one of the largest public organizations, consisting of 106 groups in 16 countries around the world. The body of the Kishtim creature was wrapped in this piece of fabric, and experts came to an unequivocal conclusion. The creature did not die of hunger, but was killed. The direct culprit turned out to be one of the local alcoholics who, having broken into the apartment, simply crushed the humanoid's head. On the fabric in which the alien was wrapped, particles of its body remained, which allowed specialists to conduct a complex analysis. Scientists from the Genetics Institute compared the DNA structure with samples from animal and human tissues. A full examination would require months. However, the DNA sample was provided to specialists for only a few hours. Nevertheless, this time was enough to draw certain conclusions. In two cases, no human genes were found, while in one case, genes were discovered, but they were identified as non-human. Vadim Chernobrov claims that, despite the confusion among Russian special services, the remains of the alien may not have reached the competent authorities. According to some reports, they are being kept by a prominent businessman from Yekaterinburg who has no intention of showing or selling them to anyone. If the coordinator of the Kosmopoisk Society is correct, and the body of Alyoshenko indeed did not fall into the hands of the special services, then there remains a chance to fully investigate the mystery of the humanoid someday. In this case, the state secret will not stand in the way, only the greed and selfishness of an individual. Almost every sensational story at some point begins to live on its own, and for most people, it is not so important where the truth lies and where fiction begins. In a bleak life, sometimes it is so desirable to believe in something bright and a little sad. Carefully reviewing the video recordings made during the expedition, the author discovered a number of pieces of evidence that he was being watched. Apparently, someone does not want the mystery of the Kishtim alien to be fully revealed. But, as always, the truth is somewhere nearby. According to rumors, impressionable Japanese people intend to erect a monument to Alyoshenko in Kishtim. Perhaps the monument will depict a small alien calling for help to the starry sky. Or it will be a sculpture of an elderly woman holding a helpless being in her arms. However this monument may look, it will serve as a reproach to humanity. It will be a reminder of how irrationally, cruelly, and greedily we treat that which could overturn our understanding of the universe.